The knock came at 12:47 a.m. Not loud, not urgent. 3 slow, deliberate taps, spaced evenly apart, as if whoever stood on the other side of my door wanted to be heard, but not by anyone else. I was awake already. I almost always was at that hour. The city of Larkspur Station never truly slept, but my apartment was tucked into the quiet ring, far enough from the transit pylons and the neon markets that the nights felt heavier, thicker. The kind of silence that pressed in on your ears until your thoughts grew louder than they should. I sat up on my cot, heart already racing. No one knocked on doors anymore. Not physically. Not like that. Messages came through the mesh. Requests arrived via encrypted packets. Emergency alerts screamed themselves directly into your neural implant. A knock was archaic, personal, dangerous. The knock came again. 3 taps. I slid my hand beneath the pillow and wrapped my fingers around the old pulse pistol I kept there, not powered, not registered, but solid enough to make me feel less alone. I crossed the narrow room in bare feet, every step measured, and leaned toward the door. "Who is it?" I asked quietly. Silence. Then, so softly I almost missed it, a voice answered. "I need you." A woman's voice. Not transmitted. Not filtered. Real. "I need you," she repeated, closer now, her breath brushing the other side of the door. "Please. Before they find me." Every sensible part of my brain screamed at me to back away, to lock the door, to alert station security, and let them handle whatever this was. But there was something in her voice, strained, controlled, like someone holding themselves together with sheer will. And there was another thing. She knew where I lived. I disengaged the lock. The door slid open just wide enough to reveal her. She stood in the corridor's dim emergency lighting, hood pulled low, rain clinging to the fabric of a long coat that didn't belong in this sector. She was taller than me by a few centimeters, her posture rigid, her shoulders squared as if she expected to be struck at any moment. Her eyes lifted to meet mine. They weren't human. They weren't glowing or monstrous, not like the vids always showed. They were almost human. Too smooth, too reflective, like dark glass catching faint starlight. And suddenly, I knew exactly why she had come to me. "Dr. Elias Wren," she said, my name spoken perfectly. Xenolinguistics Division. Formerly assigned to the Concord Archive. Formerly. The word landed like a weight in my chest. "You shouldn't be here," I said. "I know," she replied. "That's why I am." Behind her, somewhere deep in the station, a siren pulsed once. Distant. Searching. She leaned closer and whispered the words that changed everything. "They're going to erase my daughter." I let her in. I don't know if it was fear, curiosity, or the simple fact that she'd said daughter instead of asset or specimen, or any of the other words the Concord liked to use. But my hand moved before my thoughts caught up. The door sealed shut behind her. She stood there for a moment, listening, counting breaths, her head tilted slightly as if tracking something beyond human hearing. Only when she seemed satisfied did she lower her hood. Her skin was pale, not sickly, just lighter than any human I'd ever seen. Fine lines traced her temples and neck, subtle geometric patterns that shifted when she moved. Adaptive pigmentation. Highborn if my old training held. "You're Keltari," I said. She nodded once. "By your classification." The Keltari weren't supposed to be here. Not openly. Not after the Concord Accords had collapsed into 1,000 silent violations. Officially, they were allies. Unofficially, they were studied, monitored, contained, and sometimes disappeared. "My name is Sale," she said. I was a liaison. I followed every rule they gave me. And it still wasn't enough. She looked past me, scanning my small apartment with an expression that hovered between confusion and something like sadness. "This is where you chose to live?" she asked. "This is where they let me live," I replied. "Sit. Before someone notices your heat signature." She obeyed, folding herself onto the edge of my cot with unnatural stillness. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Finally, I broke the silence. "Why me?" Her eyes found mine again. "Because you once translated a Keltari death vow and refused to sanitize it." I swallowed. That had been years ago. I'd been younger, angrier. I'd argued that removing cultural context wasn't translation, it was erasure. The report had never reached publication. "I lost my clearance after that," I said. "You lost it because you remembered that we are people," Sale replied quietly. She took a breath she didn't need to take. "My daughter's name is IRI." 2. IRI was 6 cycles old. By human standards, about 8 years. She was brilliant, according to Sale. Not in the spectacular, prodigy way the Concorde preferred, but in the quiet way that frightened them more. She asked questions. She noticed patterns. She questioned instructions. "She doesn't comply blindly," Sale said. "They call it a behavioral flaw." The Concorde called it something worse. Deviation. They'd flagged IRI during a routine cognitive scan, the kind they insisted were non-invasive. The results had triggered a review. Then another. Then a quiet relocation order Sale had intercepted only because she still had access, barely. "They told me she would be reintegrated," Sale said, her voice steady but brittle. "I've translated enough of your language to know what that means." It meant memory restructuring, personality flattening, turning a thinking mind into something safer, obedient. "They'll say it's for her own good," I said. "They already have," Sale replied. She leaned forward, hands clasped tightly together. "I don't want you to fight them," she said. "I don't want you to expose them. I just want you to help me disappear." I laughed once, short and humorless. "No one disappears from the Concorde," I said. "They built the mesh." Sale's gaze didn't waver. "You helped build the blind spots." That shut me up. Years ago, buried in a footnote of a defunded project, I'd helped design an archaic failsafe, a non-network translation core meant to preserve pre-Concorde languages in case of systemic collapse. It wasn't connected to the mesh. It wasn't indexed. It was supposed to be a museum piece. "It still exists?" I asked. "Yes," Sale said. "And so does IRI's deletion order." The siren pulsed again, closer this time. I exhaled slowly. "When?" I asked. 48 hours. I nodded once. "Then we don't have much time." 3. We moved at dawn. Sale never slept. I barely noticed when I didn't either. We accessed the archive through an old maintenance conduit I still had clearance for, low level, overlooked, forgotten. The kind of door no one thought to close because no one imagined someone would still try to open it. Inside, the air was cold and dry, humming with dormant servers and forgotten knowledge. The translation core sat exactly where I remembered it, encased in dust and neglect. I powered it on. The screen flickered, then stabilized. Sale stepped closer. Her reflection ghosted across the surface. "This machine," she said. "It remembers without judging." "That was the idea," I replied. "What do you need it to do?" She hesitated. "I need it to rewrite a lie," she said. "A small one." The Concorde had labeled IRI as unstable. Dangerous. We were going to prove them wrong, using their own metrics. Sale had smuggled out raw cognitive data. Unfiltered. Untouched. Together, we fed it into the core, mapping IRI's thought patterns against historical data from dozens of species, patterns of curiosity, empathy, creativity. The machine worked silently, tirelessly. Hours passed. When it finished, the result was undeniable. IRI wasn't effective. She was exceptional. She doesn't fit their model, I said softly. Because their model is broken. Sale closed her eyes. Can we upload it? She asked. I shook my head. They'll trace it. But I smiled faintly. We can make it impossible to ignore. For the Concord court convened that night. Not physically, of course. Holographic avatars floated in a perfect ring, each representing a species, a system, a set of interests too vast for any one mind to hold. Sale stood beside me, her posture regal now, unafraid. They hadn't expected her to appear. They certainly hadn't expected her to bring a human. This proceeding is unauthorized, a voice intoned. Sale stepped forward. So was my daughter's erasure. I activated the core. Data flooded the chamber, not as raw numbers, but as translated experience. Emotions contextualized. Thoughts rendered with precision and care. The court didn't just see IRI's mind. They felt it. Her wonder, her kindness, her refusal to accept cruelty as inevitable. Silence fell. Then, one by one, the avatars flickered. This is unprecedented, someone said. Sale turned slowly, her eyes blazing. You asked us to join your Concord, she said. You promised preservation, cooperation, and yet you punish us for being more than you can control. She placed a hand over her chest. She's my daughter, she said. Not your data point. The court fractured into argument. Then, something unexpected happened. A human representative spoke. We recognize the error, they said, and we will amend it. The deletion order vanished, replaced by something else. Protected status. Asylum. Sale's breath shuddered for the first time. They left within the hour. The Concord offered Sale a formal apology. A posting. Resources. She declined them all. I will raise my daughter where her mind is not a threat, she said. At the port, she turned to me. You could come with us, she said. You would be welcome. I smiled, tired but content. I think I belong here, I said. At least for now. She nodded, understanding. Before she stepped onto the ship, she leaned close and whispered, just as she had at my door. Thank you for seeing her. The ship vanished into the stars. Back in my apartment, the silence felt different now, lighter. And when I lay down to sleep, for the first time in years, I didn't feel like the universe was closing in. Sometimes, all it takes to shake an entire system is one voice that refuses to be erased. The Concord believed endings were clean things. A ruling, a status change, a sealed record. Then the universe returned to equilibrium. They were wrong. The moment Sale and IRI were granted protected status, something rippled outward through the systems, subtle at first, like a vibration through old metal. Other cases were reopened. Quiet ones. Forgotten ones. Children labeled non-compliant. Minds flagged as inefficient. Entire cultures reduced to behavioral averages. My inbox filled for the first time in years. Not official messages. Not summons. Thank yous. From archivists who'd wanted to preserve original texts, but were told they were too emotionally inefficient. From analysts who'd seen anomalies and buried them to protect their careers. From parents, human and otherwise, who'd learned what nearly happened to their children and suddenly realized how close they'd come to losing them. The Concord never admitted fault publicly, but they changed, and that, I learned, terrified them far more than defiance ever could. 2 days after Sale left the station, my clearance was restored. Not fully. Not officially, but enough. I was reassigned to a new department with an old name: Cultural Integrity and Preservation. A department that hadn't existed in practice for decades. They didn't ask me to sanitize anything this time. They asked me to remember. 7. A message from the dark. 6 months later, I received a transmission that didn't come through the mesh. It arrived the old way, encoded light pulses routed through a relay so outdated most modern systems ignored it entirely. I smiled when I recognized the pattern. Sale had learned well. The message wasn't long. It didn't need to be. Elias. IRI asked me today why the stars don't all shine the same. I told her it was because the universe needs many kinds of light. She said she thinks humans are strange for needing permission to be kind. I told her you are proof that not all of you do. She is growing fast. Too fast, perhaps, but she laughs freely. That is worth more than safety. If the Concorde ever forgets this lesson, we will remind them. Sale. I sat there for a long time after the message ended, watching the stars drift past my window. For the first time, I didn't feel small beneath them. 8. The door that stayed closed. A year passed. Then 2. The Concorde stabilized, less rigid, more cautious. The word deviation quietly disappeared from official documentation, replaced by something clumsier but infinitely better. Emergent variation. Progress always sounded ridiculous at first. Sometimes, late at night, I'd still wake up expecting to hear that knock again. 3 soft taps. A whisper through the door. But it never came. And that was how I knew the universe had shifted. Because desperation no longer needed to find me in the dark. People came openly now. Filed appeals. Asked questions. Challenged assumptions. The door stayed closed. Not because I wouldn't open it, but because fewer people needed to beg anymore. 9. Epilogue. The word that shook them. Years later, when historians tried to mark the moment the Concorde truly changed, they argued endlessly. Some said it was the policy reforms. Some said it was the data leak that followed. Some said it was the first time a protected child testified before the court. They were all wrong. The moment that mattered most was never recorded in the archives. It happened in a small apartment on the quiet ring of a forgotten station. At 12:47 a.m., when a woman knocked on a human's door. And instead of asking for permission, instead of offering credentials or fear or compliance, she spoke one simple truth. I need you. And the universe, fragile as it is, leaned just enough to listen.